Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyachara sauchyate. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation, while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to these verse, these are greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual process in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater. Even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy, his knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
So, Lord Krishna is describing the nature that there are people who make a show, pretend to be engaged in spiritual activities, but their purpose is not for self-realization. Their mind is absorbed thinking only of sense gratification. So the word there is mityachara, pretender, right? They're not genuine in their efforts for practicing meditation or yoga. So very important, one should be straightforward and genuine. We know there are many difficulties on the path of self-realization. So Prabhupada explains if one simply follows his ashram and his varna, does his duty, then he can make progress and purify his existence. He does what he's supposed to do according to his ashram and varna, performs his duty. And so by doing that, he can make progress. Not that one has to be renounced, not that one has to change the dress and go and live in a cave and or be sitting, chanting and showing people what a great devotee you are. One should be a normal person, live in the world and perform a duty. And just by doing that, you can make progress. Gradually, you can purify ourselves. But if somebody abruptly tries to renounce the world and tries to make a show of his spiritual advancement, then that can create problems because the person is not very genuine. So his mind is always thinking of sense gratification. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the spiritual master of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, he wrote a poem, quite a long poem, about this problem. Right? And he's addressing, he says, Tumi Kishera Vaishnava. What kind of Vaishnava are you? Tumi Kishera Vaishnava pratisthana kari nirjanera gari tava harinam kevala kaitav. I think it's Bengali, right? So he's addressing the
Yes.
mind. He's addressing the mind that what kind of Vaishnava are you? That just for this pratishta, pratishta means getting respect from others. And you want to go and sit in a cave and you want people to know how advanced you are. So you're renounced, but you're just doing this to get adoration, just to get distinction. You just want people to respect you. So there was a case, what happened, there was one young Western-bodied devotee. He was given sannyas by Srila Prabhupada. And after he was given sannyas, Prabhupada gave him the sannyasi rod, the tridandi. So he was going around, he was in Vrindavan and he was going around, but he came back after some time and he said to Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, I don't like this. He said, wherever I go, people are bowing down to me. They're all respecting me. But Srila Prabhupada said to him, he said, oh, don't be silly. They're not bowing to you. They're bowing to what you represent. So this is the point that becoming a renounced person or some kind of yogi or meditator, people are not just respecting the person, but they're respecting what they expect from that kind of person. That they think of him as being genuine, that someone who's detached from the material world. And if someone has not actually detached himself from the material world, then it's cheating, then it's not genuine. So this is the idea, that when we respect the renounced person, it's because they represent renunciation. It's not just that person in particular, but it's what they represent, which is being respected. Any questions? Any comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In the yoga ladder, we have the karma yoga, the jnana yoga, astanga yoga, and bhakti yoga. Where does Sankhya yoga fit in the ladder, Maharaj?
Well, Sankhya yoga would be Jnana yoga.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yesterday night we discussed about taking sannyasa and prescribed duties and the varnas, and it was very interesting last night, the meeting we had, and that it was not needed to accelerate the process. First you are brahmachari, after you get married, and finally when you're going through all this, you may take sannyas. And my question is, shall we take sannyas at the point of our life? Or it's an obligation, or you can...
No, sannyas is not for everyone. Sannyas is meant to be for those people who are particularly Brahmin, on the Brahmin, they're working more as Brahmanas. Kshatriya and Vaishya people, they wouldn't take sannyas. But somebody who is dedicated to the Brahminical work, preaching and writing and like that, then that kind of person, then they may think. So sannyas is meant for the best of the brahmanas. Not even all brahmanas will take sannyas, but those who are particularly inclined to do propaganda work. They're meant to go out for preaching. So in the Kali Yuga, the sannyas ashram is meant for that kind of work, that they will go around and do preaching work and make propaganda for the, for the path of devotion and for the worship of Krishna. They'll go everywhere speaking about Krishna. And so sannyas is the final stage. But like I say, it's not for everyone.
Yes.
But you see, one can be a sannyasi also internally without externally going through all the things of changing the dress and carrying the rod of the sannyasi. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he shaved his head, So you can be very renounced. Actually, Prabhupada writes in one purport in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it's chapter 16, and he said there are a number of householders in the Krishna consciousness movement who are working in factories and in offices, and they contribute a major portion of their earnings for the Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada then says, such devotees are actually in the renounced order of life. They are actually sannyasis, although externally they're householders and they're working in jobs. But because they're so detached from enjoying material world, because they're so dedicated to Krishna, they're actually sannyasis. And you see also how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was a householder with a large number of children, and he'd married twice. The first wife had died, so he married again. And so he's described as being the seventh Goswami. There were 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is described as being the 7th Goswami, because he was so dedicated to the service of Krishna. Right? He discovered the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he wrote so many wonderful songs and wonderful books about Krishna consciousness. And he preached a lot. He went everywhere preaching. He established the Nam Hatha preaching. So it's not that, sannyas means simply change in dress. The real sannyas is the one who works without attachment to the results. Right? One who is not attached. So you may live with the family, you may actually be sannyasi. And we see Ambarish Maharaj in our Purana, in our scriptures, the example, Ambarish Maharaj. He was greater than Durvasa Muni. He was so renounced, but he was a family man. He was a materialistic. Externally, he appears materialistic, but he was really detached, really renounced, genuinely renounced. Right?
Yes, very, very nice, very clear. Yes. Thank you.
Simon Prabhu, do you want to read the verse 3.7? Ramya Mataji, do you want to read it? 3.7.
Yes, Vaishnavi. Yes, yes, the Indriyani Manasa Niyam Yarabharte Nirjuna Karmendriya Karma Yogam Ashakta Sa Vishishyaste. Translation: on the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active sense by the mind and begins the Karma Yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Puppet. Instead of becoming a pseudo transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime Svartagati or goal of self-interest is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopt show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Hare Krishna.
All right, so very important message. But after hearing about the pretender, now Lord Krishna is describing the genuine person, the sincere person. First of all, he tries to control the senses by the mind. You have to use the mind to control the senses, right? Higher than the senses is the mind. So the mind is meant to control the senses, and we have to work. And the work means karma yoga, without attachment, working in Krishna consciousness without attachment. So karma yoga, I was explaining, you know, that in the beginning, we may not have much taste for bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga means hearing and chanting and worshipping the deity and these things, you know, naturally in the beginning, we don't have a lot of appreciation for these things because we are conditioned to the material world. But at the same time, we are attracted and we want to begin our spiritual path. We want to go on the spiritual journey. So we learn how to do this karma yoga, right? Begin working in Krishna consciousness without attachment. Karma yoga means without attachment. So we're able to work in that kind of manner, then this is very conducive, very helpful for self-realization. Without attachment, naturally, you're doing, if you're doing some business or something, you want to make some profit. There's no profit, then how can you do the business? So no attachment. What does it mean? It means ultimately we have to depend on Krishna. That we have to understand we're not the doer, and whatever happens, we should think, a devotee thinks it's the results of my past activities. Somehow, maybe due to my past, I did some pious activities, so Krishna is making my life easier. I have everything I need. I'm very comfortable, very sat. Krishna is encouraging me. I don't deserve so much, but Krishna is encouraging me. And when things are going bad and you're losing everything, we think, I'm such a rascal, I deserve to suffer much more. but Krishna is only giving me a token punishment. Krishna's reduced the suffering. So that's Krishna's kindness on me. So devotee sees everything in the arrangement of Krishna. Doesn't think it's by my intelligence, I'm successful, I made a lot of money by my hard work, by my intelligence. No, that's not how devotee will think. Devotee understands it's the mercy of Krishna. So Krishna may be kind, he may be punishing us, but it's Krishna's mercy. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah. Do you want a cup? Yeah, there's cups in the back. So we depend on Krishna and see Krishna. Krishna is the cause. So Prabhupada says, better to be a sincere sweeper, right? He gives the example, somebody may be sweeper in the street, but he's sincere, he's genuine, he's honest. And he understands, somehow due to my past karma, I'm in this situation. Krishna has given me this job as a sweeper in the street. It's somehow, this is the karma from my past activities. Let me go on and do my duty. We know it's not eternal. Yeah. Okay. Any question, comment? Anybody?
Guru Maharaj, are we doing karma yoga or bhakti yoga, Guru Maharaj?
Well,
yeah. How to know if what I am doing, Guru Maharaj? Means
well, in karma yoga, we work first, we work in a particular way, and we offer the result to Krishna after. So the surrender comes later. We didn't surrender in the beginning, but later we surrender something of the result. But in Bhakti Yoga begins with surrender. And then we're willing to do anything for Krishna. Whatever Krishna wants us to do, we'll do. We don't just think, oh, I want to do this, I don't like to do that. No, I don't like cooking, I just want to be the pujari, or I just want to sing kirtan. No, devotee will do whatever Krishna wants him to do. That's surrender. Bhakti yoga. Have to surrender. But we also say Bhakti yoga usually means the 9 kinds, the 9 angas, beginning with Shravanam, Kirtan, hearing and chanting and remembering, and then worshipping the lotus feet and offering prayers, and then becoming Krishna's friend and surrendering everything and doing things like, worship, sacrifice, performing these kind of things. This is Bhakti Yoga. But mainly we give the emphasis on hearing and chanting. Very important. And from hearing and chanting, then everything develops. But to become Krishna's friend and to surrender everything, that comes later. That's very, very advanced Bhakti Yoga. We have to make the foundation strong. And the foundation of the Bhakti Yoga is with hearing and chanting. But Karma Yoga is all about work. work, and offer the results to Krishna. Try to offer something to Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 12th chapter, Lord Krishna discusses different levels of doing yoga. So first of all, he tells Arjuna, just think of me and without deviation. I said, that's the highest. So if you can't do that, then he says, then perform the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. And then in the purport, Prabhupada explains what is meant by bhakti yoga. He says, you worship the deity every day, you offer arti, and you study Srimad Bhagavatam, and you chant japa, and you cook for Krishna and offer everything to Krishna. So this is bhakti yoga. These are the regulated principles of bhakti yoga. But karma yoga, you know, do your job. You know, you're working, you have a job, or you're a housewife, Sri Dharma. That's also, you know, it could be bhakti yoga, but usually it's karma yoga.
Okay, Guru Maharaj.
Guru Maharaj, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You said you might be a housewife, so it's actually my example. I am a homemaker, so am I into karma yoga?
Well, you have to consider how much you do hearing and chanting. How much time in the day do you spend hearing and chanting?
Okay, it's not very much. Maybe 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours.
Every day.
No, sometimes I miss that.
Yeah. So probably you're more a karma yogi than.
Okay. So please bless me. I can change that. That can be changed.
Yeah, well, karma yogis are also very close to bhakti yoga, you see. It's very close to bhakti yoga.
Mm,
The more you're detached from the results, then the closer you are to bhakti yoga.
okay.
I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes?
If a karma yogi is to serve the bhakti yogis, then what kind of yogi is that karma yogi? Like if my karma is to serve people who are bhaktas.
Oh, that's very good karma. You're very fortunate to get the opportunity to serve the devotees. That's very, very special. You get a lot of benefit by serving the devotees. We see like Narada Muni in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the story is given about Narada Muni, how he was the son of a maidservant in a previous life, and he served some holy man who came to his house. And so shortly after that, because they stayed there at his house for some time, so he was serving them regularly. And he was hearing from them, and they taught him things, and he even ate some of their remnants. So next life, Narada Muni became the son of Brahma because he had so much good association with the devotees and because he had the blessings from these devotees. So if you can serve the devotees, then it's very, very special. We say, by serving the devotees, it opens the doors to liberation. So yes, you're very fortunate to serve the devotees.
So in that case, Prabhu, if a household is full of devotees and the homemakers in that house are actually very elevated devotees because they're serving them.
Yes. Yes, if people in your house are devotees, you're very fortunate. Yeah, you get a lot of association and you get a lot of opportunity to serve devotees.
But Guru Maharaj, most of the time, the family members are not devotees. Mataji get initiation, but the husband is not a devotee. But Sri Dharmas, we have to serve them, right, Guru Maharaj, for the pleasure of Krishna. We have to do like that. How to serve the non-devotees for the pleasure of Krishna, Guru Maharaj?
Well, we have to give them nice prasadam, right? Keep them happy by giving them some nice foodstuffs and what's offered to Krishna. And we try to give them some mercy, awakening them to Krishna consciousness. Sometimes on a big festival, you take them to the temple, bring them to the program, and get them, Actually, we say also that the husband and wife, you see, their karmas are combined, you see. So the husband enjoys the pious activities of the wife. And the wife also enjoys pious activities of the husband. But if they do something sinful, then they can also suffer. If the husband does something sinful, it can also affect the wife. So it's very important to try to encourage your husband not to do sinful things, not to get intoxicated, not to eat meat and things like that, It's really important, because otherwise that also affects you, because husband and wife, we say wife is the better half of the husband. It's described like that in one of Prabhupada's purports, that the wife is the better half of the husband because she helps the husband with all of his different problems, different things he has to do in his life. The wife is very important to the husband. Helps to take care of the home, gives him nice meals, and keeps him company, and so on. So this is all very important. So their karmas are interrelated. So you do want to try to encourage your husband, and if he has any bad habits, you want to discourage him from these bad habits.
Yeah. But in that case, Guru Maharaj, but if it is not possible, then they can never lead a sinless life. Most of the time, sometimes, we can try to discourage, but it won't happen, and then there is no choice for the other partner to have a sinless life.
Well, you have to see what Krishna wants. Yeah, you have to do your best to discourage your husband as much as you can. You try to keep him away from these kind of things. And at the same time, if he's so adamant, if he's not going to give them up, then you have to become a little less attached to your husband. You have to just simply serve him out of duty, but within your heart, you have to be attached to Krishna. Right? Prabhupada gives the example about the wife who is serving her husband, and but at the same time, the wife has another lover, like a secret affair. So she doesn't want her husband to know. She wants to keep her husband, but at the same time, she's having an affair with another man. So she's very careful to do her duty very nicely, to keep the house very clean and to cook the nice meals for her husband and not to argue with the husband, like that, to keep a good relationship with the husband, because she doesn't want the husband to know that she has a secret. So the same way, a devotee wife is like that. You have Krishna, and Krishna is like this special lover who you've got. He's the special, the other man aside from your legally married husband. So you're having a relationship with Krishna secretly, but you keep it in your heart, and you do your home, keep your home, do your housework, do your duties as a wife very carefully, so that your husband doesn't know, so that he doesn't get disturbed Because if all the time you complain to him and nag him that he doesn't want to change, then we'll make the marriage very difficult. So you just have to keep yourself quiet and at the same time cultivate your Krishna consciousness. Without him, he's not going to help you. So you know that he's not Krishna conscious, and he doesn't want Krishna consciousness. So you go ahead on your own and become Krishna conscious.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Prabhupada tells he had one sister, and his sister, she was married to a man who was of very bad habits. But his sister was a very soft, gentle-hearted woman, and she never complained and she never nagged him or anything. And she just faithfully served her husband. And gradually the husband completely changed. He gave up all his bad habits and became very devoted to his wife, to serving his wife. He gradually began to appreciate that he had a very good wife, and he would simply serve his wife and associate with the wife. And he gave up all of his drinking and other bad habits which he had. So that's one way.
I'm sorry, Maharaj. I had a connection of it was cut. I didn't understand what she has done, the sister of Prabhupada, to get her husband changing habits, because I was
Well,
cut.
she was just serving him very nicely.
Okay.
She never nagged him. She never complained to him. She just simply was very faithful and chaste and very obedient. And she gave her husband so much service. So the husband just changed. Gradually he understood that he was so lucky to have such a nice wife. So it's one way to influence the husband. It may not work for every man, but for some men, hopefully gradually people change as they become a little older. They become a little more sober, a little more mature. The young men, they're thinking about enjoying life and things, but gradually they become more sober and more responsible. Isn't it true?
About me, it's completely true, yes.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. But Guru Maharaj, for a husband who doesn't have a devotee wife, they don't have to try so much, right, Guru Maharaj? They can take sannyasa.
Oh, the man's a devotee, but the wife is not?
Yeah.
Well, certainly Prabhupada took sannyas, and Prabhupada said if the home life is not favorable, then he may have to leave the home and take sannyas, yes. It may be possible. But he has to be qualified. He has to have studied, he has to practice Krishna consciousness. He must have developed some renunciation from the world. And of course, if the children are there, then the responsibility is there for the children. Children should be grown up. Otherwise, they're still depending on the father. We see Prabhupada did take sannyas. He left the home because he found the home life was no longer favorable for his practice of Krishna consciousness. people were, they were giving, the whole family were just giving him problems. He was always trying to make the family Krishna conscious, but they were not interested. And then one day even his books went missing and he didn't know where they'd gone and nobody would tell him where they'd gone. And so he thought, it's time to leave home. So he went to Vrindavan and he stayed in Vrindavan for some time and he was working there, doing some writing for the devotees, different articles and newspapers which the devotees were printing. And then he was having dreams that his guru was coming to him and telling him he had to take sannyas. So he approached one of his god brothers and his god brother told him, yes, this is good, you should do it. So he accepted sannyas. But he was 60 maybe at the time. Yeah, he was about 60. Not young man. Of course, people are too young. It's also difficult. They're too young, when you get a little older, you may decide you don't want to be a sannyasi. We have that, we've seen that in ISKCON sometimes. Some young man takes sannyas and then later on, somehow they get a bit older, they decided they don't want to be a sannyas. They want to be married or something.
So, Guru Maharaj, does that mean if they take sannyas in a very young age and later on they regret their decision, does that mean that their chanting was not effective, or what does it mean?
Yes, certainly there's something wrong there with their practice, that maybe you could say they're maintaining material attachment. They didn't, somehow, their chant, as you said, their chanting didn't have the purity or the power to free them from worldly desires.
Because the similar kind of thing happened with me. As I was trying to convince one of my friend to join Krishna consciousness, she forwarded me the similar kind of incident. I think it happened somewhere in Africa. I don't know really. So she said, oh, how come you say that Krishna consciousness is good when these kind of things are happening? But at that time, I did not had any answer for that. So I stayed quiet. But I just told her, if it depends on person to person.
What did she say happened?
The situation just said something like similar kind of situation has happened somewhere in Africa, maybe some sannyasi. I don't know. She just showed me on internet, which I don't believe, because sometimes internet spreads bogus news as well.
Well, it happens everywhere. It doesn't just happen only in ISKCON.
Yes, absolutely.
It happens in other organizations also. They do have these problems, Which in ISKCON, they do try to take care nowadays. They do have a lot of things, requirements before people are allowed to be a sannyasi in ISKCON. In Srila Prabhupada's time, it was the beginning of the movement. So Srila Prabhupada wanted some sannyasis to help him to establish the Krishna consciousness movement. So he gave sannyas to some people who were very young. Some people in their 20s, and even like Jaipataka Swami here in Mayapur, he was, I think, 19 when he took sannyas. Very young, to take sannyas at that age, really difficult. We hear about, of course, Sankaracharya, he took sannyas when he was 6, I think.
They are saintly people. I think they are just born to take sannyas only. They just appear to take sannyas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really not for young men. That's the point. Although it was in, like 1,000 years ago, it was common. And you do have sometimes Bala sannyasis in some places like You know, you may have somebody born in a special family and they check his chart and, oh yeah, he's definitely a sannyasi, and, you know, they make him a sannyasi when he's very young. But in ISKCON, they have some rules. You know, one should be, you know, maybe at least 40 years of age. And he should be freed from family responsibilities. He shouldn't have any responsibilities. He may have been married before, he may have had children, but the children should be, you know, they shouldn't be depending on him. These kind of things. And he must also be well qualified. He must have practiced Krishna consciousness very well, studied the philosophy, and be very aware of the knowledge of the Shastra. And he should not be attached to material things like money and association with the opposite sex also. These things have to be controlled. Some people become very attached to money, and then with money, then, you know, they think about enjoying with the women. So sometimes that problem is there. But generally, you get older people and try to keep a check on things like, you know, the money which is coming and how it's being used and where it's going, all of these things. So yeah, we have had cases in ISKCON. We had some young people like that, had problems. So you could say it's due to their spiritual practice. Definitely, must be something there. They're doing something wrong. The chanting maybe not proper, too much attachment, too much involved. Sometimes get too much involved with managing and money and not enough time preaching. That's not good. And sometimes also too much time just with disciples and not enough time with your god brothers. You want to be more with your peers. You know, peers mean people who are on an equal level to you. You don't just always want to be with people who are under you, because if you're always with people who are under you, then, you know, they are always very respectful to you. But if you're with people who are your equals, then they will tell you, you know, you're doing something wrong. This is not right. Why are you doing like this? You know, they'll tell you to your face. Whereas the younger people, you know, they're reluctant to say anything that, oh, you know, they don't like to say, because they're thinking, oh, he's so senior, he's my senior, he's my guru or something. So they won't speak so directly. So it's important to spend time with people who are equals and even above you, because they can, you know, really put you in your place. And that's important because it's important to realize how insignificant we are, how we're nothing. We're very small. We want to remember that. So humility, very important. So those are some things. Okay, so we should chant Hare Krishna now.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.